Welcome in. First edition of the Winning Plays podcast for the 2021-2022 regular season. My name is Brian Robb. Rich Lean is off today, which means we bring in a big gun, Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston, Celtics Talk podcast.
Wait, do I have to bring a trivia question like Rich usually does?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I'll let you think on it for a little bit. We'll save that for the end of the show. You are a numbers man.
Who is the only Boston Celtics center to play 45 minutes with only one foul?
Semi-Aridin. No.
Yeah.
Would that be the Time Lord?
I'd have to go through, just off the top of my head, I can say that that's probably never happened in a game before. But the fact that the answer is presumably Time Lord and only Time Lord is a great way to start this program. So I think I've hit everything.
I guess we can. I don't even know where to start with Wednesday night's game. It feels a lifetime away now as we record on a Thursday, and with this team going to be playing 4 games in their first 6 nights, we'll probably forget about it very quickly. But I guess it's Celtics tradition where it's just an absolutely wild opener. Like we remember last year where Tatum hit like the buzzer-beating bank 3 to beat the Bucks, and now last night's game clearly tops it. A lot of things hit on. Let's start with the good, though, since it was just a wild game. I mean, and you brought him up, so this is you're the guest here, so you lead the way. So
we're going right to Time Lord.
And I wrote about Time Lord after this morning because it was that was beyond Jaylen's 46 points or whatever. If you look in the good column from the night, I feel like him hitting 45 minutes and only having one foul, and also having incredibly productive line. Otherwise, that has to be the top of the good list. No.
It's so funny because it took every ounce of my being not to write Time Lord this morning because I was so enthused by what I saw, and I kept sitting there going, "My God! Like, look at his minute total!" Like, I could not actually believe that he was playing that many minutes. And look, he was as gassed as anybody in the second overtime, in the first overtime, probably stretches of the fourth quarter when he was, because there was a point, B-Rob, last year, there was a point I remember writing a story or doing an in-game hit or something where he'd only played over 20 minutes like 3 times during the Brad Stevens era. Nice. And last night he played 45 minutes. And the absurdity of it is not lost on me. Now, I still chuckle because, Jaylen Brown was out of quarantine for 7 minutes and scored 46 points in 46 minutes. And so I feel like that deserves top billing. But I'm also not going to fight the fact that Time Lord being super impactful and being super present when the whole story of the season might hinge on, like, if Robb Williams is out there, they have a chance because they need him. And the stat line is slightly inflated because he played so many minutes, but still didn't miss a shot, was pretty good at the free throw line, 6 of 8, in a close game. He probably wish he'd made the other 2. But the blocks, the assists, the steals, like, I guess my big question is, Rob, when is the 5x5 game coming for Robb Williams? Should I bet this weekend?
Yeah.
Is there is there
Houston.
something I can put money on this?
Houston against Tice. That's the lineup there. But no, to your point, what was the bigger surprise from this game? Jaylen Brown scoring 46 points, or Robb Williams? Like, what was more unlikely, or Robb Williams playing 45 minutes? I've been like, Robb Williams playing 45 minutes because that would never ever happen. And yeah, he looked tired, but there were a lot more guys on the floor that looked a lot more tired than he did, which was another huge upset too, which we can get to. As Ime paying tribute to Tibbs in his first coaching performance with.
I made that joke on my podcast. It really is crazy, and maybe just because Brad Stevens would have gone, he probably would have put in the 2-way guys by the end of that game, and capped Jason Tatum at 34 minutes. But it was jarring to see the way Ime kind of went for it and forgot the sub. The only one he remembered to put in was Dennis Schroder, who probably could have spent a little bit more time on the bench in the overtime periods. But look, in the big picture, and I keep saying this, it's so weird because it's the first game and everything's an overreaction, but there was far more good than bad, and top amongst them is certainly the fact that Robb was able to hold up. Now, I keep posing this question because, I am slightly concerned. He is low to the ground this year, like ground bound Time Lord, and I don't know how I feel about that yet. He had that one dunk in transition where Marcus lobbed it up to him, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, looks a little bit more like the Robb I know. But are we okay with this? Are we okay if like Robb is just, if it means he can play 45 minutes by not jumping everywhere? Are we cool with that?
I think that's a fair trade-off. If that's what it needs, if the extra muscle or whatever happened to him this offseason that keeps him from going head over heels, which is it should be a good thing for his health.
Yeah,
I do think that is a plus. But I do wonder. I mean, like going back, it was good to see him get a run like that, because when Al Horford comes back in the equation, that's going to be a decision pretty much every night now, I think, of like who's your closing five. And long term, obviously, Rob Williams is the better answer, the answer that the organization should want. But there's going to be plenty of nights where Al Horford is the more trusted guy, the guy who you're not going to see Evan Fournier get 4 or 5 open looks at the 3-point line in the overtimes again and again, and like cleaning stuff like that up. So, but all things considered, that apparently wasn't Rob Williams' fault. That was everyone else's fault, the miscommunications on the perimeter. And if that's the case, then I don't know. Like, I don't want to. Well, let's go to Ime. Let's go to Ime.
How about the fact that Boston Celtics decided that Rob Williams needed to guard the best player on the other team for the entirety of like the final crunch time minutes? Like as I'm driving home from our offices in Needham last night, I'm kicking myself. I'm going, how did I write on Jaylen? Like Robert Williams was so afar, and I guess it's just a good way to be able to hype him up for the Toronto matchup. But yeah, like there's just a lot of encouraging signs there with the way that they clearly view Robb and the way that Robb can impact them. And the fact that Ime comes out, how about just Ime in general being like, so we decided that we were going to switch, everything but 1-4, but not, Julius Randle, and kind of explaining and giving that rare peek behind the curtain. God bless Brad Stevens, but like, even just revealing the starters before the game was jarring. So it's a whole new era in Celtics basketball, and there's positives for that.
Ime is an open book, and I don't know how long that's going to last for, but because I think when Brad started,
until Brad yells at him,
right? Until Brad yells at him, or Brad's like, "Hey, we don't need to tell anyone, these guys, other teams, whoever, we are doing them no favors." But Ime doesn't care. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you what it is." And, a lot of coaches do that, and that's good. Like that's good for us. That's good for, I think evaluating the team. And so if you're not going to Jaylen, I mean, there's not too much to say about him, like in terms of just the performance speak for itself. Playing those kind of minutes, coming off the quarantine like that. I'm not like sure what else we can add to that.
There's nothing, but that, it's just absurd.
Right.
It's just
absurd.
I can't wrap my head around it, because we see guys that, miss a week because of a knee bruise or whatever, and they come back and they're riding the exercise bike between things because, everyone's worried about like getting stiff and all this. Jaylen Brown has literally been cooped up, presumably. I'm sure he has a big house and all that. Like he can probably run around and do things, but 10-day quarantines are a 10-day quarantine. And for him to come out and play an NBA basketball game that was that intense and score 46 points and play a career high 46 minutes is just ridiculous to me. And the one thing I keep coming back to, and so it's like sort of big picture on Jaylen, like the only thing I can add to this conversation besides the absurdity of it is I do think there's something to, like, Jaylen has been really loose this preseason and into the regular season. There's a different energy about him. And I thought it was interesting that Kemba was on the other side, this like beacon of positivity. And now here you've got Jaylen Brown, who like is sort of almost assuming that mantle to me. Like he understands. He's like the world's oldest 24-year-old. But for me, he's just so happy to be out there after missing all that time, having to watch the playoffs last year, that I think it mattered to him. That it mattered for like that it was Ime's first game and Jaylen wanted to be out there, and that it mattered that Jason Tatum didn't have it going and Jaylen. So I just think Jaylen's in a really good space mentally, and once the physical stuff catches up, like, what more can he do? I'm not expecting 46 points every night, but it's a really good sign, because every year we say, well, how much better can he get? He didn't really have an off season, a summer, all that, and well, damn, like he still figured out a way to get better. So good on Jaylen Brown.
And to your point, I had totally forgotten. Oh yeah, this is his first game back from the wrist thing. Like he played a preseason game, but the quarantine took the limelight off the fact that, he hasn't played a real NBA game in 5+ months there. And, so I'm just going to come back with casual 46 against a good defensive team. So that, again, like you said, all positive signs there. The way we've talked for the first 10 minutes, you might think the Celtics won that game by double digits, but they did lose. There were some troubling things. So I think in the interest of fairness, we should start tackling
what was your
those.
number one troubling thing? I want to see if we're aligned on troubling things.
Oof. Are we going personnel? Or are we going like this? I mean, I think there's a couple of things. We'll start with number one. This is the most easy for me. I mean, the Smart going off the rails in the fourth quarter with the shot selection. I think that has to be the number one, because that's the reason why they lost the game. If they don't pull off that miraculous comeback, is
putting it on Marcus Smart.
Not him entirely, but it's like that was their chance there. Like that's exactly. And he played a good game otherwise. He played great for the first 3 quarters in terms of like facilitating. He played well in overtime. He only took a couple shots, when they were there. But that was the window, that 5 or 6 minutes in the fourth quarter where he decided to go into hero mode again while Jaylen is having a career night. That was bad. And that's something that they, any other night would not have recovered from. And just something that if he embraces this point guard role this year, you want to see less of that. Certainly you don't want to see that when he doesn't have it going himself. And the individual line looked fine. He shot 5 of 11. So again, he you'll take that any day of the week, but the Williams thing beyond, if we're looking at just an individual standpoint, defensive stuff.
Are we taking the 11 shots per night? Because I mean, again, it's a
that's right. That's too high.
Game, so it's probably a little bit too high. But again, you got to adjust everything because of the length of the game. I do wonder what the narrative would be if he doesn't hit that shot at the end of regulation to force overtime, and if there's a little bit more angst about Marcus Smart. But look, this is going to be something that's throughout the season. We've talked about it. Every time I write an article about how the season's going to go, it all comes back to Marcus Smart in balance. Like, can he figure out how to harness the best version of himself? And last night wasn't the best version of himself. So he's got to get better. But I would throw Tatum in that bucket too. And I think Ime Udoka was warm but demanding when he said after the game that they tried to get him going. He kept seeing crowds. And in those instances, Jason needs to figure out how to be more of a facilitator and get everybody else involved. And that's the big storyline for the Jays this year, is that there are going to be nights when one or the other doesn't have it. And how do they compensate? Like elite level players, when they don't have it, find ways to impact the game. And I don't think Jason Tatum, despite some good moments defensively, impacted the game the way he could have, even on a 7 for 30 shooting night. And that's tough to see, because the big buzz coming in was, Tatum's ready to take over and be the superstar. And that, for at least for night one, that did not happen.
What do you think was the most troublesome part of Tatum's night? Like the shot selection, or is it more of, again, his legs in overtime were just gone. A couple of those, the awareness of not, if you're going to take the jumpers there, make sure you have legs that you can actually get rim on them. And I think he had back-to-back shots there in that first overtime where they didn't even come close.
So maybe instead of all those bicep curls that ended up on Instagram, he could get the incline bench or whatever it is that you push up on with your legs, because he's still got those skinny little. I can't say skinny little legs, because that they're NBA players. They're way more in shape than I am and all that. But let's see you get to the point where you can play 58 minutes. And look, again, this is so overreactionary, and I hate to come down on a guy who's probably going to go out and score 50 points against the Toronto Raptors, but you just expect more now. The bar keeps moving, right? The field goal keeps going back because of what he's done and the way he ended last season, the 4 50-point games in 50 days, and then winning Olympic gold. What we expect from Jason Tatum is just higher now. And so, I just need more. I think the most concerning thing to me was after an entire offseason of hey, here comes the bully ball, we saw Jason Tatum settle for 3-pointers and get frustrated and I need in those instances, even if bully ball's not working, and there's going to be nights where it doesn't, for him to find a way to take that attention that he's drawing and make other players better. And it's the hardest step for every NBA player to find a way to consistently make every other player better. But KD does it, LeBron does it, like the great ones do it. So that is Jason Tatum's challenge.
No question. And again, on a night, particularly when Jaylen goes for 46, like even a slightly subpar performance, even just like straight subpar performance, that's enough. But you just can't have the absolute like stink bomb for the season. But again, kind of good news for the Celtics today. Hey, they were still in that game despite that kind of an effort there without a couple of key guys.
What did you think of Dennis Schroeder's night? Because this is the one I'm irrationally
not great. I do think, it's tough for me. He hit a couple big shots at points where like the Knicks had runs going. I think that's the one like positive thing I could say when the offense really went flat there. But beyond that, there wasn't much to write home about there. Beyond, he made that good pass to Smart to get the shot up for 3 at the end of regulation instead of taking it himself. But that's reaching. And I'll lead it to you here to piggyback. Like what I assume you're not pleased with what you saw.
I think my frustration was every like Fournier 3 that I watched at the end of that game seemed to have Dennis Schroeder flying by. Now, maybe some of that was miscommunications, and maybe it's not all back on him. I need to sort of go back and watch the end of the game again. But in the moment, I remember thinking, man, he's such a good on-ball defender, but in team schemes and like team-wise, he sometimes loses his way, and that's a concern because – as good as he is offensively, he needs to take it to another level defensively and not just hounding, 3/4 court or whatever it is like that we know Dennis Schroeder can do. He needs to be solid in those team schemes. It's just a little bit of a concern. I think part of it was too, like that last preseason game, he looked really, really good. And I got irrationally I think I might've submitted my 6th man of the year ballot at that point. And early return. Now, not that anyone off that Celtics bench was particularly great last night, besides Romeo. Obviously.
But even speaking of Grant, and like the way he was shooting at the end of the regulations, like I was kind of like, okay, I don't know what Schroeder's done to earn those minutes in overtime, but like I get it, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess I was okay with it because when you don't have Al and you're trying to determine who your best 5 are at that point, and you're playing a team that goes small, I was okay with it. I understood it. And you're probably thinking, if anyone, he's probably got better legs at that point than Grant, and even in his slimmed down version. But it just wasn't. For whatever reason, it wasn't the right call in that situation. And maybe it's a moot point because normally it'll probably be Al, or if you go small, maybe it's Al or Robb out there, and maybe Schroeder. I don't know. That's the fascinating part is that. I don't know quite what to draw from one game, and we're going to need to see more of it. The fact that he's got Ime's confidence early is probably an encouraging sign, but needs to be just a little bit more crisp in that situation. And I'll tape my 6th man of the year ballot back together when he has a good game and does well.
All right, so Ime's debut, I'd say I don't want to call it. It was a positive mixed bag, if you will. I'll say this to start. The fact that Jaylen Brown after the game is saying like I didn't want to miss Ime's debut, that was the reason to play. The fact the vibes around camp have been great, with everyone talking about it, and so that's first and foremost he gets the kudos for that because that's when you have a coach that everyone is geared up to play for. Not that wasn't Brad Stevens, but it's after 8 or 9 years, it's like at a new team anyway, starting a new school, whatever. Everyone gets a little hyped up over it. I think that's something that you could see that translate even maybe in that like end of game run where they tied things up. Like the effort was there consistently, and so that seems like a pretty big plus. Yeah, no,
and I can't deny any of that. And I thought it was telling too. Just like you said, I didn't notice it in the moment, but I went back and was rereading the transcript this morning. The fact that I think both him and Jaylen and Jason both sort of alluded to it, like how important it was being Ime's first game and trying to get him that win and how much it mattered to them. Same deal. Like I don't think it's a reflection on Brad. It's just, it clearly matters to them and the relationship they've already forged with the new coach that they're that invested already, and that it matters to them. That Jaylen sitting there suggesting that, as he's deciding whether he's going to even be able to play in this game, that being out there for Ime was something that mattered. And I just think that shows the buy-in early on. I think that's an encouraging sign. I think that's been a theme throughout, right? Like this is clearly someone that they were, wanted in that position, that they were enthused because of what his resume has been throughout his playing career and now as a coach, and so that's positive. And I think Brad Stevens would say that too, right? Like when Brad brings in this guy, he's got to be able to get through to those two guys in particular. And so the fact that they've bought in early and that should inspire buy-in throughout is an encouraging sign. What did you think of Ime's performance overall?
I'll give him a big plus to staying small off the bench. Right play in that game. They were, if you want to have a switchable defense, bring in Cantor or Parker or Hernan Gomez, which they could have been tempted to do at parts of those games. Like, no, like we're gonna stay small. We're gonna play Robb or Grant in the middle, and Grant was playing well enough where that I think was totally justifiable. And so I think, like big picture wise, in terms of who you want getting those minutes, in a situation where Richardson and Horford are out, I like the rotations there. But beyond that, the end game stuff, I don't know. What was your initial reaction to the non-challenge on the charge there? Do you put that on?
Yeah.
Is that even his decision? Is that like the coaching? Is that his staff? Because someone's looking at that obviously on the bench.
He said that they had the view behind the bench or whatever, and that they were adamant it would not have been overturned. I don't know that he sounded like way more bullish on that than I would have been. I think in that sense, like what's the harm? Right. Like why not just roll the dice in a situation where you needed that, where you thought you needed that momentum swing? I think that would have been a big talking point around the team if they hadn't got to overtime and done all that and made it more interesting than it was. But yeah, I think we're left to judge timeouts, personnel, the Tom Thibodeau sub style of like letting guys just play. I'm kind of on board with it. I know we opened by joking about it, but I do think there were times where Brad's reluctance to go over 34 minutes with guys was, while understandable, was also like, come on. And, like I'm sure the players at times were like, just let us play. And those stints could take them out of rhythm and stuff like that. So I'm intrigued to see if that's something that persists or if that's just like a night one thing. And like end of the day, any coach that's willing to play Robert Williams 45 minutes gets an A+ for night one. So I think it was encouraging. The other thing I like is that as we kind of, he's an open book. Like coming in afterward, I think we all sat there and said, boy, the Celtics were kind of, there was a lot of finger pointing and why aren't you? And he's like, yeah, we decided like we have to switch only 1 through 4 because we needed Robb to stick with Julius Randle. I was like, oh, okay. Like that gives us a glimpse into the decision-making process. And I think as much as Brad tried to keep that behind closed doors and behind the curtain, and completely understandable why, it feels like Ime's like going to be willing to sort of bring that to the forefront. And whether that's telling Jason Tatum he needs to be more of a facilitator at times when he doesn't have his shot falling, or, revealing a little bit about their defensive scheme, I think it helps us understand how things are going. And I think the players will appreciate that sort of approach as long as he's consistent with it in terms of like, again, calling out everybody for stuff he doesn't like, and explaining sort of like why they do what they do.
Well, yeah, and you can make sure you're not missing any flights too, because then they'll earn you a seat on.
I mean, still no captains, by the way.
That's true. That's a good point.
Maybe just waiting for. I mean, now I'm more convinced that. Look, I dug in. I thought it was going to be Jaylen and Jason to empower them. The fact that they haven't named them suggests maybe it's, although, you never know, because it could be like a home opener thing where it's like, hey,
it's Horford and Richardson.
Well, that would be hilarious. I do think it might be Al though. Like he's not here right now, and it's probably like even if it's just a symbolic thing, it matters. And so I think I've told you I'm not sure how I feel about that because of the fact that. You don't know how this roster is going to look at season's end and into next year. And I think it's weird when you promote captains that aren't long-term fixtures of your team. But I also get that if they do, because Al has the respect of that locker room and Jaylen has said it. And so I don't think there's a wrong choice. I don't, but maybe there's more of of a choice that makes sense in the long-term picture. But end of the day, it's probably winning games is more important than worrying about who has the C on their jersey.
Well, yeah, Brad's probably going to send the message down to him if it's Al, being like, "Hey, let's
if we're not going,
let's make it in behind closed doors that he's the captain. We don't need to." So the trade in February for with Al being the matching salary goes over a little bit easier.
What if they traded both their captains at the trade deadline? Like, I mean, it just
Al and Smart
can't rule it out.
And Beal for Beal, yeah. I mean, that would certainly be part of the deal, or any deal. Honestly, any deal, any big deal involving a high price player. Those guys are involved.
In the bigger picture, it's part of the conversation, and I mean that shouldn't take away. Like, you can still be a leader and get traded. Like, that teams have to do crazy stuff like that. But when you look down the list of captains throughout Celtics history, I always sit there and say, like, they weren't trading Pierce or Kuzi, or maybe they would have traded Pierce, but not in that instance. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it just matters that they better be your pillars. They better be for at least through one season if you're going to promote them to that spot.
Going back to Ime and Tim being blunt about the defense and the miscues and stuff like that, I like that. But here's my other critique for him in overtime. Then, you got to call a timeout. Then, if you keep messing that up over and over, and it's that simple, be like, get everyone together, get everyone on the same page. Or if it's not, and the guys are too tired to fight through screens, then you have to get someone in there like Grant who can actually get out to the perimeter there. Because I mean, when Fournier, that's how they went over. They slowed down Randall, but Fournier just got any shot they wanted at that point over and over. And I know it's, that might just be micromanaging and stuff like that, but when it's a double overtime game and everyone is literally running on fumes, then you have to either get everyone on the same page or at least change the look so that you're going to get a hand in the face of the guy who's burning you.
I like this. I hadn't really considered that, but I completely agree now that you brought it up. I think that's a fair critique. It's not, and I know timeouts were probably an issue just because they ran out of them there. But in overtime, you get a couple back.
Two.
So
right.
Yeah. So I completely agree. When it got messed up a couple times, get on the same page, get back out there and make sure it doesn't happen again. That can't happen. Although I kept wondering. Is Fournier going to be a Celtics killer from now on?
Probably. Yeah. Kemba won't be. Poor Kemba does not look like he's going to be killing anyone this season. But Fournier
did hit a play with that one. We had 1-3, but then Robb swallowed them up half the time. But yeah, if you could get Ish Smith, Chris Middleton, and Evan Fournier on the same team, they would beat the Celtics 200-0. Yeah, that was just remarkable. It's credit to the Celtics for hanging in there as he's throwing haymakers, but did not expect France Fournier out of the gates. It's funny that we spent so much time worrying about Kemba on the other side, and then it was Fournier who Celtics would have liked to have seen some of that last year.
Yeah, they could have. I saw something saying that Fournier scored more points last night than it took him X amount of games to do it. But it's he had COVID, so it's come on. No,
fair. Didn't stop Jaylen.
One last thing, or one parting thought after last night, in the positive front, Romeo. I almost thought Romeo could have been playing who should have played in overtime? Put Romeo in over Schroder based on who played last night. I know that might have been a situation where you don't want to lose Schroder. If he's not getting those minutes with Richardson and Al out, and it's Udoka understandably is going to go with veteran there, but who's the best player off the bench? It was Romeo by a landslide last night and for the last couple of preseason games.
I keep saying this, the fact that we're just even talking about Romeo should have been out there in overtime is just kind of wild.
A long way.
Yeah, no offense, and I was talking to one of our producers about this. I said, I think we forget he's only 22, and unlike Jaylen Brown, growth isn't linear, and there are complicating factors. But I'd sort of checked off I sold my Romeo stock, and I was very bullish. I meant to tweet it last night because I had a story from December of last year of why Romeo Langford would be the biggest surprise for the Celtics for the 2021 season. And I was going to say, due to an editor's error, the season was misreferenced and should have been the 2021-22 season. But no, like he's been really, really good. He was way better than my guy Neesmith and way better than Peyton Pritchard. And you're right. It probably should have gotten more consideration in that spot based on the way he played. Look, if he just continues to make open shots,
just the threes,
and he's
what are you gonna do?
You can't miss. And who knew all it took was going from shedding the number 45, getting rid of that. Was that Rafe LaFrence's number?
Yep.
Either way, shedding the albatross that was 45 and going to Rondo has inspired, or Brad Wanamaker has inspired, I forgot what podcast I was on, has inspired him to turn over a new leaf. And good on Romeo for hanging in there because he's heard a lot of slander from these past few years. And so good on him for hanging in there. Again, it's one game. And I know we can say like he had a really good summer, he had a really good preseason. It's still one regular season game. It still gets a little bit more convoluted when Josh Richardson is out there and Al's out there. If I'm Neesmith and Pritchard and Romeo, I'm thinking, man, we didn't play a lot of minutes in a game that went 58 minutes and there was a thin rotation. I'm very curious about how this rotation looks. But I guess they're still in a better spot than Juancho and Ennis and all that. But good for Romeo.
Yeah, one of those guys aren't going to play, I feel like, when they're at full health because with Horford back, I mean, Horford's going to take a lot of Robb's minutes, but then, or even Grant's minutes too. But if Pritchard and Neesmith are only playing 11 and 12, like I could see Richardson playing 20 minutes a game if he actually, if he's playing well. That's far from a sure thing. We'll get into that for a few. That remains, so we'll leave him out for a future discussion there. But at this point, Langford has to play until he starts missing, and so we'll see if that continues. Danny Ainge is fist pumping right now as he's seeing all his picks come to at least show the potential that they saw from day one.
Even just the starting lineup being all former Danny Ainge picks was, I mean, that is kind of wild. And I know, like, look, if Al's healthy, he's out there, but it says a little something that probably, let's do the math here, 8 of the top 9, 8 of the top 10. Are Danny picks, and for someone whose drafting was a bit maligned, and like, look, he had his misses, and Carson Edwards and Tremont Waters or whatever they're doing right now proves it. But quite the homegrown collection that they're leaning on now, and some big shoes for further pressure for Brad Stevens as we wait to see if poor man's Russell Westbrook comes to fruition down the road. And I'm little pressure on Brad to be the drafter Braddy.
Right. So, I mean, the name of the game now is consistency, though, for all those guys as the games start rolling fast and furious. But we'll leave it there. Make sure you check out all of Chris' stuff on Celtics Talk podcast, everywhere. On pre and post, and NBC Sports Boston. The man's everywhere. I'm sure if you're not sick of him yet, you probably will be after this podcast, but we're going to make him do it anyway.
Probably. If you could just pause this now, go check out Celtics Talk, and then come back to hear this.
Exactly.
When he has real guests on. Right? Not me.
All right. Rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff to the Winning Plays Pod. Hit us up at Winning Plays Pod on Twitter, and we will be back with you guys next week.